Good afternoon and welcome to today's DMA webinar sponsored by the EEC Awards Subcommittee, How to Gain Greater Control Over Your Customer Data for Email Marketing. I am Megan Bradley, the Education Events Coordinator here at the DMA. The DMA is proud to support informative events such as today's webcast. If you would like to learn more about the DMA, please visit thedma.org. This webinar is also brought to you by the Email Experience Council. Today's presentation will be followed by additional EEC webinars throughout the year. And if you'd like to learn more about the EEC, please visit emailexperience.org. For those on Twitter, our hashtag for the event today is #EECwebinar. Please also make sure you join in on the conversation and contribute any questions or thoughts you have using the question function found on your GoTo panel. We'll do our best to address all of your questions at the end of today's session. We hope you enjoyed today's webinar, and I just want to say that the speakers' presentations and comments represent their own viewpoints and do not necessarily represent the views of the DMA or the EEC. Joining us today is Lisa Brown-Shostak, Managing Director for the Email Experience Council. So without further ado, I will turn the presentation over to Lisa.
Thanks, Megan. It's my pleasure to introduce to you today's presenter, Will Devlin. Will is the Director of Marketing for MessageGears, which means he leads all marketing efforts for the company. Previously, he led marketing programs and strategic services for Shop Visible, which is an e-commerce software provider. And prior to that, he spent nearly a decade managing e-commerce and customer service for Gander Mountain and Overton's, an internet retailer top 250 company. Will is an accomplished tech marketer and industry expert and has contributed to publications such as Investor's Business Daily, Internet Retailer, Multi-Channel Merchant, and CIO.com. Will is also an active and valued member of the EEC Marketing and Membership Subcommittee, as well as the EEC Awards Subcommittee. And just a quick shout out before I turn things over to Will. We encourage you to take a moment to nominate a well-deserving peer, mentor, colleague, client, or friend for an EEC award. The nominations have just opened, and it's free and easy to nominate. You simply go to our site, which again is emailexperience.org. And you can fill out an online nomination. Next week, we'll also have a webinar. It's on January 12th, and the chair and vice chair of the awards subcommittee will take you through our different awards and what the judges will be looking for. So again, please, if you have a moment, go to our site and register for a webinar or nominate someone for one of the awards. And without further ado, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Will.
Thanks, Lisa. Welcome, everybody, to this afternoon. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join us here. Today's presentation is going to be roughly 35 minutes or so. We'll have a time for a few questions at the end, and everyone will be receiving a recording at the end as well. Any questions that we don't get to answer at the end, we'll make sure that we follow up afterwards with everybody. As was already mentioned, you're invited to tweet along using the hashtag EECwebinar as well. So let's get started. The content today is geared towards anyone who has a hand in their company's email marketing efforts. We're going to go through some survey data today that comes from marketers working in the mid-market and enterprise space, but the goals and the challenges likely apply to most businesses where email is a major component of the online marketing strategy. So the goal here today is to get you thinking about how you want to improve your email program in 2016 and hopefully plant a few ideas that can help you map out how to get there. So we're going to start by taking a brief look at how far email technology has come in the past 10, 15, 20 years or so. Email marketing has become so sophisticated over the years, and email technology providers have been able to give marketers the tools they need to really begin to understand how to best communicate with their customers and to drive significant revenue. So the question then becomes, what's next, and how do we continue to evolve from there? So from there, we're going to take some time and review some findings from a recent survey of email marketers. And this is going to highlight what marketers think is working well for them as it relates to their email programs and technology, and where things need to improve. There are 3 main themes that continue throughout the answers to the survey, and we've identified those as common roadblocks that email marketers are facing when it comes to improving their programs in 2016. The 3 roadblocks are: I can't access all of the data I need when I need it, IT has to be involved in everything, and email processes take too long, limiting real-time marketing efforts. So if any of those challenges sound familiar to you, stick around. We'll talk through some ways to help break through some of those roadblocks. And then once again, we'll have time for some questions at the end. I'll briefly talk about MessageGears here. We're an enterprise email marketing solution that serves forward-thinking, data-driven organizations looking to utilize all of their customer data for email marketing. So throughout this presentation, you're going to hear about the importance of eliminating data silos and centralizing data. MessageGears' hybrid solution combines the benefits of on-premises and SaaS software into one complete package, and we empower customers like Expedia, Runkeeper, Music Today, Pursuant Health to improve segmentation and personalization by giving them access to the freshest, most up-to-date customer data directly without needing to replicate or sync that information to us. As one of the fastest growing enterprise ESPs on the market, we're recognized in 2015 by the American Business Awards as one of the most innovative companies of the year, and CIO Review named us as one of the top 20 most promising digital marketing solution providers in 2015. We were also recognized by the Relevancy Group in their annual ESP Buyer's Guide for excellent deliverability, infrastructure stability, and account management. And the survey results covered in today's webinar are from an upcoming report from MessageGears using data collected by the Relevancy Group. So today, you all are having a first look at these results, which uncover some important points about the state of email marketing and email technology. So the Email Technology Insights and Best Practices report is going to be available later this month and will be emailed to everybody that's attending today's webinar. All right, so let's briefly talk about the evolution of email marketing from its humble beginnings to where it is now, and what companies need to do to keep pace with the expectations of today's omni-channel consumer. So email has remained the communication channel king for decades, and it's expected to grow in the U.S. to a $6.5 billion industry by 2018, according to market research. So anybody that's tried to declare email to be dead over the years has been proven wrong time and time again, and the technology powering marketing communications continues to evolve and get more sophisticated. Email technology really started off with early list servers, which was a primitive piece of software or a piece of technology, but it did one thing very well. It sent an email to a large list of addresses in a much more cost-effective way than any other marketing channel. If you remember, kind of back in the day, early websites were essentially brochureware, right? There wasn't much going on. And early email marketing, it wasn't much different. It didn't offer any personalization capabilities, and it provided few insights into deliverability and analytics. But this is where Batch and Blast was born, where email really got its start. We take a message and we send it to people and get their attention. In the mid-90s, commercial email solutions emerged to give organizations more options and features than they'd ever had. On-premises solutions were, and still typically are, pretty heavy and complex systems, but they installed in-house, and they give marketers direct access to their customer database for email marketing. So email service providers began listening to the needs of their customers and started providing new features in tracking and analytics and the more intuitive user interfaces. These early solutions still had the limitations, right? Again, they were complex and required a great deal of IT involvement, but they made email marketing a little bit better and a little bit more personalized. And I don't think it's news to anybody here, but perhaps no technology has been more innovative and disruptive, especially as it pertains to email marketing, than software as a service, or SaaS. Really began emerging in the late 90s. The massive and ever-growing cloud ecosystem has been a godsend for businesses big and small, as feature improvements and extreme cost savings over other solutions have really allowed marketers to communicate so effectively that they've shaped consumer expectations. SaaS email service providers, or ESPs, they can capitalize on this multi-tenant efficiency, and they can pass savings back to their customers. And a lot of them started offering managed services so that businesses, their customers, could focus on marketing instead of trying to be experts in things like deliverability and how to get my email to the inbox. The landscape has expanded, and it's become much more competitive, which pushes ESPs to release new features, handle advanced personalization and segmentation needs, advanced analytics, automation, and testing tools. Cloud-based solutions have allowed marketers to realize the power and the high ROI of email marketing. But the technology itself has sort of remained stagnant over the past several years, really because a lot of the larger ESPs have been acquired and rolled into larger cloud solutions. So the time's come for ESPs to really take the next evolutionary step. As a marketer, how much insight do you have into the entire customer journey, from first touch to ongoing communication? Do you have a complete global view of your loyal customers? Today's consumers, and we are all consumers, we expect personalized, relevant, and immediate messaging, and we also expect a consistent experience no matter how we're interacting with brands. But most organizations have these silos of customer data that are stored by various vendors and various departments, which makes it difficult to have that complete view of the customer and market to them effectively. Marketers need to access the freshest, most up-to-date data from all touch points to create a seamless experience, and a lot of that starts by centralizing that data internally. So let's hear from email marketers themselves what they feel is important data to have access to, and what challenges they face when it comes to building the email program that they desire. And as we go through these survey results, think about your current situation and how you would answer these questions. So here's a look at who is included in our survey. We had over 300 participants from the United States, and they were surveyed in the fall of 2015 of last year. 60% of them categorized the companies that they worked for as enterprise, meaning they marketed across the U.S. and internationally. It had more than 1,000 employees. The rest identified themselves as mid-market, meaning they were U.S. marketers in companies with at least 100 employees. Small businesses were not included in the survey simply because of the nature of the questions being asked. But some of the data coming out of it is applicable to any company. Most of the responses came from people in marketing leadership roles, although we did have some IT and marketing technology participants. And everybody surveyed contributes to their company's digital marketing efforts, at least somewhat, and it's the primary focus for most of them. So these participants represent a wide variety of industries. Half of them come from either financial services, retail and e-commerce, and travel and hospitality companies. And then the rest kind of represent everything from government to pharmaceuticals to telecommunications. And since we're working with people representing larger companies, it makes sense that their monthly email volume is pretty high. So most of the participants in our survey send somewhere between 10 and 50 million email marketing messages every month. But a good percentage send even more than that. And you can see here almost 5% send over 100 million messages every month. So at these high volumes, email marketing just can't operate effectively by sending everybody the same message. So that you have to have that need for the personalization, for segmenting your audience, and that's important when you're working with this level of email. Now, I apologize, this slide here is a little confusing, but I'll try to explain it. We asked what percentage of overall revenue is attributed to email, mobile, display, and social for our participants. And as you can see, email had the highest mean of over 20%. You can also see in the chart right up where email is there that a decent portion of the responses said that email accounted for over 40% of their revenue, and that's overall revenue, not just digital revenue. So while marketing through mobile devices and social channels, it's certainly grown in popularity in recent years. Evidence suggests that consumers still prefer email, and those other channels are still emerging a little bit. In a recent Marketing Sherpa survey, 75% of tech-savvy social media addicts stated that email was their channel of choice when it came to getting marketing messages. There's also, there's a little bit of gray area when we say mobile, especially nowadays, because people are reading email and going on social media and visiting websites on their mobile device as well. But the takeaway here is that email has been, and still is, a significant contributor to overall revenue for a lot of companies. Many organizations, and you may be one of them, utilize more than one solution for their email marketing. So we asked what types of technology our participants used within their organizations. The choices were software as a service, or SaaS, commercial on-premises, a custom homegrown solution, or a hybrid solution. SaaS, again, we're all familiar with. Software it's licensed and it's hosted by the vendor, and it's made available to customers on a subscription basis. So SaaS solutions are hosted in the cloud, and you access them via a web interface. Commercial on-premises solutions installed directly on a local service inside the customer's own network or a server of their choosing. Homegrown solutions are those that have been developed and are maintained by the company itself. This gives them complete control and direct access over everything, but it usually requires internal resources to not only devote a lot of development efforts to it, but become experts in things like deliverability. And the solutions can be behind on features and functionality. And then finally, hybrid has a different definition depending on who you ask. So some people would classify hybrid as perhaps a combination of two of these, like SaaS and homegrown, for example. That setup would be considered hybrid in their example. It could also be a solution like MessageGears, which is a solution that has both on-premise and SaaS components working together in one package. But what you can see here is that, no surprise, SaaS is used more than other types of technology. We did see certain industries that are likely working with sensitive data, like governments, pharmaceuticals, and financial services. They tend to rely on on-premises or homegrown solutions because they need that data to stay secure behind their firewall. But media, retail, automotive, and travel were some of the industries that had the highest percentage of participants utilizing software as a service or a hosted ESP. So now that we have more information about who our survey participants are, we wanted to know how satisfied they were with the various aspects of their email marketing program. The categories here are email marketing vendor technology, deliverability, email marketing revenue, technology's ability to scale, and the ease of data utilization. So most here seem satisfied with the email vendor technology and deliverability. The deliverability one is an interesting point because even though the average inbox rate for our participants was under 90%, people seem relatively satisfied with that. But about 20% here are at least somewhat dissatisfied with how easy it is to utilize their customer data. So you're going to see that as a pattern as we continue here, where marketers have a strong desire to integrate more data into their email programs, but they seem less satisfied with their current ability to utilize it and access it. One other note here, we saw that mid-market participants seem to be less satisfied overall, which may signal that they are using tools that they either need to graduate or upgrade from. So now we want to find out what marketers feel are the most important elements to having a successful email marketing program. So here are the top selections displayed here. You're going to see that access to customer data, analytics, and data security are top of mind. Some of the elements that didn't make this chart include strategic and educational services, content management tools, and testing functionality. Those are all nice to haves, but they are not the most important elements according to the people that we surveyed. Participants from enterprise companies also placed a larger emphasis on technical and integration services and automation workflows. But nonetheless, marketers feel that in order to be successful, they need to be able to access customer data in a secure way and then be able to understand how their recipients and customers are responding and behaving. So we know that being able to access customer data is important and top of mind. So now we want to know what data email marketers feel are the most valuable in delivering ROI when segmenting their audiences. The most popular answers are shown here, and they include demographic data, customer satisfaction surveys, customer lifetime value, and purchasing behavior. Mid-market participants also placed a high value on social influence data and click-through stats. Some of the ones that were rated the least valuable include acquisition source, purchase recency, and open rates. One thing I think it's important when you're looking at this particular chart here is just because somebody says that they feel that this data is the most valuable in delivering ROI doesn't necessarily mean that they're currently utilizing it. So we asked, what data are you currently utilizing? What are you planning on bringing in during the next 12 months to your email program? And what information do you have no plans to implement for email? So almost half of the responses are already using behavioral data, location, information, and contextual data in their programs. And then there seems to be a strong desire not only for those, but especially real-time data and bringing that in 2016. And interestingly enough, more than 20% of participants really have no plans to implement data around RFM and attitudes. So what are the biggest challenges that you face when building and executing email marketing campaigns? The number one response here by a mile, you can see, is that participants aren't able to leverage all of their marketing data. Other popular responses here include that there's too much IT involvement, that processes take too long with vendors, and that marketers in general don't have a lot of control over the data itself. Responses from enterprises organizations also highlighted that they disliked replicating data. What customer data companies are able to utilize really depends a great deal on where their data resides and how it's accessed by their email technology. Many ESPs require customer data to be replicated and stored in their systems, and that can limit what data are able to be utilized, especially in certain industries. And it really leaves marketers with a subset of information instead of the whole picture. So we asked how much of customer data lives in a central data warehouse, and 95% responded that at least some does, but only 34% say most of it does, and just 9% have everything housed in one location. So this means that there are pieces of information living in different areas of an organization, and in order for marketers to obtain that unified view of their customer and for them to utilize everything they know about their customers effectively, slowly eliminating these data silos and housing everything in a centralized location should be a goal for 2016. Many companies integrate more than one source of data with their email service providers. So you think about CRMs, content management systems, inventory systems, e-commerce platforms, marketing data. most participants indicated that they integrated 3 or fewer data sources. What I find interesting here is that 13% responded that they didn't know how many data sources they currently integrated. And that highlights to me a disconnect where marketers don't always understand where their data is coming from, even internally. Getting those data sources integrated with their ESPs wasn't easy. We asked how difficult these integrations were, and over half would describe it as somewhat difficult, and another 24% said it was very difficult. 9 out of 10 participants from mid-market companies described integration as one of those two, either somewhat or very. And this brings us back to centralization. If you have your data in one location that you're accessing, you're not needing to integrate 2, 3, or more sources with your email technology. And finally, we asked our participants what prevents them from utilizing all of the data that they collect for their email marketing efforts. A third of them said that they don't have the necessary IT resources, and 29% said that their solutions are not integrated, probably because they find it difficult to do so. We just saw that in the previous chart. 25% also said that coordination between different marketing channel managers isn't up to par, which means that not only are these data silos a problem, but internally their teams aren't even communicating effectively with each other, which makes things even worse. All right, so we've gone through that information, but it gives us a good understanding of where marketers feel they're handcuffed when it comes to building an efficient and data-centric email program. So we can go back and look at common themes and challenges from these responses. And when we did that, we looked at the answers from the survey. Again, we came up with the top 3 roadblocks for success. I can't access all of the data I need when I need it. IT has to be involved in everything. And email processes take too long, which limit real-time marketing efforts. We're going to take a closer look at each of these 3 roadblocks and talk through a couple of ideas that can perhaps help you remove them. So the first roadblock, I can't access all of the data I need when I need it. If you're like the email marketers that responded to our survey, this is a big one for you and is the most important one for you to work through. So you'll remember from the survey results that access to customer data was the most important element of success for email marketers. So we're talking here about demographic data, customer satisfaction, lifetime value, purchase behavior, clickstream analysis, things like that. Being able to meet consumers' expectations and provide a consistent experience across every channel you have, including email, requires seamless access to updated, fresh customer information. And remember that most of our participants answered that they have none or only some of their data in a centralized location, which means that there are pieces of the puzzle scattered throughout different areas of the organization rather than everyone looking and working with a complete picture. So some ways to break through this particular roadblock include, no surprise, a plan to consolidate and centralize your data internally. This limits the amount of integrations that you need, and it keeps everything in one place for every team in your organization and all the vendors that you work with to access. Your organization's goal, and you as a marketer, your goal should be to give everyone a unified global view of the customer, which then in turn helps you provide that seamless, consistent experience really no matter where customers are interacting with you. So if they're interacting via email or mobile or in-store or a call center or social media, you're providing that consistent experience because you have that global view. This is going to help break down those pieces of information and consolidate and gives your entire team access to more information about your customers. So from this data, it appears that that enterprise organizations, are moving towards this goal much faster than mid-market companies. Second, look at your existing technology and see if there are ways that you can utilize it to access your data directly. And if that's not possible with your current group of vendors and solutions, put a plan together to find technology that does make it possible. One of the major limitations of many vendors is that they require you to send pieces of your data about your customers to them, and then they'll store it in their systems. And that not only gets in the way of providing that global view, but those vendors don't have a complete picture either, because you're not able to send all of your data to a vendor. That would be too large of an undertaking. So instead of sending bits and pieces of customer information to various solutions for use, find technology that acts kind of as spokes to a central database hub, if you will. And finally, don't outsource anything you don't need to. The beauty of many vendor solutions is that marketing is in control. The marketing department is in control of pretty much everything. But you need to be careful to protect your data. That's your data, your company's data, not theirs. So carefully select vendors that don't want to control or own your data, and instead just want you to access and utilize it. The second major roadblock to email marketing success: IT has to be involved in everything. Now, this is one of my favorite questions, if only because it highlights internal disconnect that everyone here is probably aware of. We asked our participants to tell us about their marketing department's relationship with the IT department, as in how well do the two departments work together. Only 12% described the relationship as excellent. And over half described the relationship as above average. A large chunk here, 36%, said it was below average or poor. So for any marketers that are attending here today, let me make one thing very clear. No matter what vendors you choose and what type of technology you're working with, IT is going to be and has to be involved. You're going to need them for the initial integration, for any maintenance or new data that needs to be exposed, troubleshooting, setting up automations. In some cases, depending on the solutions being utilized, especially for triggered messaging, IT is going to own the template and the sending mechanisms themselves. They also have to be aware of your email sending volume to be able to make sure the capacity is there for your website for traffic. Remember that IT is the gatekeeper, is generally the gatekeeper of the data. It tries to limit threats and keep an eye on data security. The more vendors that need data sent to them and kept in sync, the more frustrated IT can be. They're trying to manage dozens or more solutions and keep all of that data fresh and in sync. And when you create these additional silos, you're putting IT at odds with the marketing team, especially because IT doesn't have control over the solutions. Marketers also want to play around and test different scenarios, particularly in email marketing. And a lot of this is either done on the fly or with very short notice because of how easy the tools make it to test. This causes friction between the teams when marketing rushes to IT for help or access. So how can we work to create some peace and harmony between the teams? I don't want to sound like a therapist, but talking to them is a great start. You need to have your teams work together to understand each other's goals and needs and to set expectations. You can set up some common rules and procedures for getting things accomplished, and it's very important for you to stick to them. Making them aware of your plans for the upcoming year is going to reduce the surprises and can really help IT anticipate your needs and even find ways for you to make things easier. So just ask for their help. Tell them your goal of, I want a complete view of my customer. How can I do that? Another way to break through this roadblock here is to involve IT in the vendor selection process, especially when the solution needs access to customer data, like email marketing, right? In a lot of cases, marketing is going to go out and select a vendor and maybe involve IT late, or they're going to tell IT after the fact. But involving them throughout the selection process gets them thinking through the integration and implementation earlier, And they can also contribute and bring up valid points for maintenance and scalability that you didn't think about. So get their input and advice, and they'll appreciate you for it. And you do want them to appreciate you, because we will not be successful, let's face it, without working harmoniously with them. Our final roadblock is that email processes take too long, limiting real-time marketing efforts. So for all the rhetoric about real-time marketing, many retailers and marketers don't actually have real-time access to their customer data. Think about the data that you send and store with various vendors. Every time a data sync finishes, the information the vendor has really starts becoming out of date and stale until the next sync and the next update. Depending on the vendor and depending on how much data you're sending back and forth, this process can take minutes, hours, or even longer, which really takes the real-time out of real-time access. We know that accessing more data is the #1 priority. So if it's already taking too long to get what you need, it's only going to get worse. And companies that are planning on utilizing real-time data in 2016 are going to need to think about consolidating and centralizing their data. I think most of us have been on the receiving end of an obvious disconnect where it was clear that a system wasn't accessing up-to-date information. Already here in 2016, just a few days in, I've gotten emails that have promoted products that I just bought last week. And I got a reminder this week to sign up for an event that I've already signed up for. Think about how a customer feels if you send them an email with a big 20% off coupon code an hour after they just placed a big order with you. Fresh data is important in creating that consistent omni-channel experience. Many solutions allow companies to offload the heavy lifting, but in a lot of cases that's going to eliminate the benefit of having direct real-time access to internal data. Different pieces of technology need to be kept in sync, and that creates lag, and that only gets worse with every new vendor that you bring on board. So perhaps you should think of your email program like you think about your website. Websites generally have access to the latest and greatest information. They typically live in-house, and they need to, right? You have customers logging in, you have customers placing orders, you need to have their information, their inventory for all your products, pricing information, all of that needs to be kept in sync, and the best way to do that is to not outsource it. The best way to have all that information available in real time. So what if you thought about email in the same way? No matter how quickly an ESP is sending information back and forth through your FTP or APIs, it'll never match the accuracy of using fresh data from your internal systems. Think about your real-time needs and what information you're going to need to utilize to make these programs effective. Automated campaigns such as confirmation emails, shipping notifications, flight statuses, event reminders, and nurture and onboarding programs, they need certain information immediately in order to be effective. Then you have triggered emails like abandoned cart or product view promotions. They need to be plugged into the global view of the customer. Nobody wants to get an abandoned cart email promotion after they've already returned to the site and completed their order, or perhaps even called the call center and completed their order. You may also be setting up action triggers like firing off a message or an internal job based on an open or a click, or maybe a reply like if somebody texts for an account balance or rewards points. There are surely more examples, but the point here is that any of these programs that you want to set up, they're meant to move and act in real time. And in order for that to work, they have to have access to customer data behind the scenes in real time. So the first step in eliminating this roadblock is to map out what your needs are from a real-time marketing standpoint, and then make sure all of the processes and vendors are properly aligned. Multiple vendors and technology solutions working together need to be carefully orchestrated to avoid an inconsistent and clunky experience for prospects and customers. Put yourself in their shoes when setting these programs up. What is this going to look like from the user's perspective? And finally, again, look for technology that accesses a centralized database directly, and remember to involve IT in that process. So whether it's working with or combining some existing technology or shopping for something new, the goal should be to consolidate instead of continuing to outsource. Right? You need one database of record, not multiple ones scattered all about. Okay, that hopefully gives you some ideas and gets you thinking about how to attack these challenges in the coming year. So let's briefly recap what we've discussed. I think I have said it about a dozen times, but really think and plan on consolidating and centralizing your customer data internally. You're going to need IT's help, so it's best to start working with them now to align goals and map out what future needs will be. Have them help find technology that accesses data directly versus replicating more bits and pieces of it. If you're able to use solutions you currently have, that's great, but if not, make sure that you keep IT involved. And finally, map out your real-time needs and search for solutions to support them. You need to be able to access fresh, up-to-date data, and that's imperative for growth. If you're able to begin breaking down these 3 major roadblocks this year, you're going to be well on your way to being able to provide that consistent experience that today's consumer just expects from you. This can increase revenue because of relevance and build brand loyalty because customers have a sense that you understand who they are and how they interact with your company. So with that, we have time for a few questions. It looks like we've gotten a few as I've been talking, but keep them coming. You can also ask questions to us directly on Twitter if you need, using the hashtag EECwebinar. The first one here, when you're talking about accessing data directly, are you saying that we need to buy on-prem software? Okay, great. That's a great question. I think obviously one of the best ways you're able to get at customer information is to have technology that also lives internally, but I realize it's not a solution for most companies that they would consider or think about, because it does require a lengthy implementation or build out from IT, not to mention that you'll have to figure out how to get the emails out the door eventually. So I think the main point that we're trying to make here is that the technology that lives in the cloud typically requires a data sync, right? So you're replicating and sending them data, and they're sending data back to the internal systems at intervals. You can't send everything to a vendor. You can't send up all your customer data and inventory and pricing and web, all that for storage. That would be impossible for them to store and, of course, keep in sync. So when you're sending info that you think you're going to need for email, for example, to an email vendor, you're only sending a subset of information. And then there's a lag between then and when you get updated info back from them. And to me, that's an issue, especially when you multiply that by several vendors for several different processes. So I think the answer here is that you need to find technology, and it's out there, that integrates with your data in a way that keeps things real-time and fresh. We had a vendor pitch us their technology yesterday, in fact, and they stated that something updated on one end and would update in real time on the other, in the other piece of technology. And during the demo, it was clear that there was a lag, and there was a several-minute lag. So the salesperson was stalling a little bit while it was processing. And that's the kind of thing that you just need to question your vendors about, whether they're existing vendors or when you're shopping for new technology. Just how can we accomplish things without needing to send and store a ton of data in your systems? What if my ESP is my database? That's certainly something you'll need to think about in terms of scalability and utilization moving towards the future. There are companies, or at least marketing teams within companies, I think, that think of their email service provider as their marketing database, especially if they're keying other channel communications off of that, like mobile and social and display. But depending on your business, and I would guess for most, that would be uncomfortable. And that still means that you still have to sync up data from other systems like inventory and call center, e-commerce, in order for that to really work. I think the other danger there is that you need to make sure that the data that you're storing with your email provider doesn't go away if you were going to switch providers. So I don't personally think it's the best idea to use your ESP as your centralized database, if you will, but I think most people would agree there. I do think that marketers within a lot of organizations probably tend to think of their email provider or perhaps their marketing cloud, depending on who they're using. They probably think of them as their database, but I think IT in the same company would tell you it's just one piece of the puzzle and it's not the central location. What do you mean by outsource? So I'm guessing that refers to when I said that you shouldn't outsource things you don't need to. I guess this is similar to the first question. What I mean is not necessarily outsourcing your marketing like with an agency, although I guess that advice would still apply here. Really, I'm talking about if you have functionality available within your existing technology, or you're able to utilize solutions that don't require data to be sent and stored outside of your company, then I would choose those when they make sense. Some areas and solutions, they might not have an alternative, and so you either send us the data or you can't do that functionality at all. But for things like email in particular, there are options out there where you're able to accomplish the same things in terms of executing email, getting tracking and analytics, and segmenting and all that. You're able to do all of that without having to send your data to a vendor. Because there are vendors out there that don't want your data. And so I guess that's what I mean by don't outsource what you don't need to. Okay, well, if you have any other additional questions, or if we didn't answer yours, feel free to tweet us. Again, EEC webinar is the hashtag, or you can send me an email at will.devlin@messagegears.com. And I want to thank everybody here for joining us this afternoon. I do want to have one more shout out. I don't think there's a better way to start the new year than becoming a member and joining the community at the Email Experience Council. So if you are not a member already, I would encourage you strongly to help grow your career and give you some great networking opportunities and great educational opportunities like this one. Go to emailexperience.org, learn more, sign up, and become a member. We'd love to have you.
Thank you, Will, so much for putting on that great webinar, and thanks again to the EEC for sponsoring it. I will be sending out a recording along with a PDF of the presentation within the next 24 hours. And so with that, this concludes the